Maybe, so Piper, you're, to start off, how about you, introduce yourself? What are you? What do you do for Ethereum? Are you even in Ethereum? Maybe you're in Solana. What have you been up to recently?
Some of you guys just heard me talk. Let's see. I've been around for quite a while. I got lucky and was in a spot right when the network launched. Built a bunch of stuff. Went and worked for ConsenSys when the EF had no money. Took some of theirs for a while, and then switched over to the EF when the EF did have money, and I was pretty sure ConsenSys would make me do business things at some point. This is the most amazing career I could have imagined for myself, and I couldn't have imagined it. There's like a trilemma of like, get paid decent, do something you like, and do something that matters, and I get to do all three. It's pretty neat. I've worked my way as deep into the protocol as I could find and found my niche. I really have enjoyed learning about decentralization and peer-to-peer networking and cryptography and all of that stuff from an engineering perspective.
I mean, Piper also has the honor that he killed part of my job. I used to maintain Py-ethereum, and then he wrote Py-EVM, which is better.
I really worried that I'd step on some toes there, and I'm glad Vitalik has small toes.
So more recently, you've also been doing this thing called the Portal Network, right? So I think we'd love to know, what is the Portal Network? Like, what is the vision here?
Yep. Some of you just heard me talk about it a bunch, but the aim here is actually delivery of lightweight protocol access, the ability for lightweight devices, laptops, Raspberry Pis, phones, things like that, to interact with the Ethereum network in a first-class way that doesn't require a central intermediary.
So, like, if the Portal Network worked well, my MetaMask wallet or Brave wallet would be able to access Ethereum and do Ethereum things without having to trust in Infura. Would that be correct?
Yeah, that's the theory. The goal is really, really lightweight clients. In theory, you could have 2 or 3 of them running on your machine at any given time, embedded in a wallet that you use, or as a system daemon or something like that MetaMask connects to. And yes, being able to get at whatever data in the Ethereum network and protocol you want from that kind of lightweight device.
Okay, so the one light clients thing that I know exists, right, is like there's Helios from A16Z, and there's some similar things where basically, they sit on your computer, and my understanding is that you kind of RPC over to them as a local host, and they actually verify Ethereum block headers using sync committees, and then they actually verify Merkle proofs, right? So what's the difference between what we have with things like that and what an ideal Portal network would offer?
Am I getting Helios right that it's still sourcing data from centralized providers, but it's just doing it in a provable way?
Yes.
I think that they serve similar use cases. Something like Helios is going to be more performant from the get-go because you're still pulling data from centralized sources and just verifying it. I think that those are really nice solutions. I wish that had been what we built kind of the RPC, like JSON RPC API with to begin with. It's one thing that if we could use our time machine and go back and change some of the things we did, that might be one of the good ones. But it still depends on centralized sources, and those centralized sources can still do things like correlate IP addresses to your chain activity and things like that. I think there's lots of use cases where that's just totally okay, but for that to be the best option we have, and for there not to be an option that is decentralized and in some ways more privacy preserving because of that, we supposedly care a lot about decentralization.
So what are the concerns with centralization you're seeing? Like, is it privacy? Are there other risks here?
Privacy, there's some fragility issues, right? Like what happens when Alchemy goes down or Infura goes down, right? How many applications stop working? How many wallets have to run their own infrastructure? Or how nice would it be to be able to decouple the wallet from the infrastructure and to not need to have those two things be so tightly coupled. I mean, it centers around that stuff. It's not an absolute hard requirement. There are plenty of use cases where a centralized source is okay. I just think that we should have decentralized alternatives as well.
Yeah, well, maybe just to get a bit into like what Portal does and how it works, right? So let's say, I am a user and I'm using a dApp, and the first thing that my dApp wants is to, like, let's say, query my current balance, right? So if this is all done through Portal, like, what happens? What does Portal do?
So let's say that you're opening your laptop up and it's been offline for a while. So the first thing it's going to do is bootstrap into the network, probably with a hard-coded list of nodes that it knows to trust that are shipped with the client. It learns about the topology of the DHT pretty quickly. DHTs are really neat peer-to-peer networks that have kind of this concept of topology or shape. As soon as it's bootstrapped into there, it's going to use the beacon light protocol to jump straight to the front of the chain as fast as it can, pulling a little bit of data to figure out what the latest block header is. At that point, it has anchors to what the state roots are, and at that point, it reaches into the state network to pull out your ERC20 token balance out of the state from whichever node in the network is essentially tasked with storing that.
Yeah, so this state network, so who is tasked with storing things?
So we take all of the state and we essentially map it onto the address space of the DHT. And so you can kind of, I can imagine, I don't know if you can imagine, it's really hard for me to figure out what other people see and don't because I've been in this stuff for so long. But nonetheless, you take that 250 gigs of Ethereum state data and you map it onto that address space. Any of the nodes that are close to where that piece of data ends up getting mapped are likely to be storing it. And the DHT has these really nice mechanisms for traversing to that spot in the network, finding the nodes that are there, and then you can ask them for it. And essentially, it's not one node that has it, but it's any conglomeration of them that are nearby.
Right, okay. So this is basically one of those things where, like, if I joined the Portal network as a node, then, like, I would be tasked with, like, taking some slice of the state and holding it and maintaining it.
Yeah, and I want to. It's a subtle distinction, but tasked versus implicit responsibility.
Okay.
Everything in Portal and kind of the DHT mechanics that we've built is emergent behavior rather than assigned behavior. There's a bunch of rules and everybody just follows them, and the emergent thing is that nodes that are close to where a piece of data is mapped to end up storing that data.
Right, I see. So, and then when you say are close, this is like based on the address that I get, like randomly assigned some kind of a hash when I join the thing?
Yeah, I've been playing around with how to talk to people about this because there's layers and layers. But one way to think about it is if you were trying to find a random Starbucks in the other side of the world and you didn't have Google Maps and all you had was your network of people that you knew, you would probably look through your address book and figure out the person that you knew who was the closest, who lived closest to France. And you call them up and you say, hey, I'm looking for a Starbucks in Paris. And they go, well, I don't live in Paris, but I know somebody who does. And they give you their phone number. And then you call them and they're like, yeah, I don't live in that neighborhood, but I know somebody who does. And you call them, and each step you get closer, and each step you get quite a bit closer, right? Because if we do this kind of 7 degrees of Kevin Bacon thing, we can get to Kevin Bacon pretty fast, which means we can get to that Starbucks pretty fast. It's roughly how it works. is this sort of incremental lookup through all the nodes storing a little bit of information about what's far away and a lot of information about what's close by. You have a very small amount of information about places that are far away from your home, and you know pretty much everything that's on the block where you live.
Who do you expect would be running these nodes?
My hope, if we want to go like pie in the sky endgame, is that every execution client ends up running one of these nodes. I think that it's going to be a better sync strategy and a way for execution clients to lighten what they do without sacrificing anything in terms of security. I also see them being embedded things. So when you download that wallet app that you use, there are probably going to be some versions that still sit on centralized infrastructure and call out to Alchemy or whatever. But my hope is that some of them embed Portal Network, Portal clients in them and use that for grabbing data. If we're going kind of pie in the sky, it'd be really cool to see iPads at point of sale that are able to do crypto payments without going through any central intermediary, and who are able to actually just take payments right there and run the client on the iPad.
I like that.
We have like 10,000 nodes in the Dev P2P ETH network, and this is a thing where I think that we could easily see in the hundreds of thousands or millions of nodes, assuming certain versions of success over the coming years. Lightweight nodes that give you access to the Ethereum data, like there's a lot you can do with that.
Absolutely. So you mentioned privacy before as like one of the reasons to not do everything through Infura or whatever other like single provider. Peer-to-peer networks might sometimes have like an even harder time guaranteeing privacy, right? Because someone who wants to infringe on privacy, they can just like insert themselves into the middle of a network in a bunch of ways. So how do you fight against that?
We don't directly, is one of the things. But I think that there's two models of privacy to think about here. One is targeting, and the other is like Dragnet, right? Alchemy has access to correlate every single RPC request with an IP address, right? They can do that on every single request that comes in. It's a bit more difficult to do it in our networks, and it's definitely a bit more difficult to do it in a targeted way towards a specific node. It doesn't say that there aren't ways that you could eat away at or infringe privacy in the current designs of our network, but I will say that the current designs of our network are very much aimed at an absolute minimal, what do we need to be useful, and to be able to start iterating from there.
What do you think is the functionality that will be available first?
It's available today. You can go fetch arbitrary history from our network, blocks, receipts, bodies, that sort of thing. Up next is the ability to follow the beacon chain using only Portal protocols.
Well, congratulations. It's a lot of progress already.
Thanks, Vitalik.
Do you intend this to be just for light clients, or do you also see other kinds of Ethereum nodes also using this?
I'm trying to encourage my team to build towards what is essentially kind of R&D space in execution client land. I think that there are major improvements to execution clients' UX and functionality that could be realized using Portal protocols. One of them is state sync. The state is evenly spread over all of the nodes in our network, which effectively means that if you wanted to sync a full copy of the state out of our network, you could pull at whatever level of parallelization and concurrency from all of those nodes as much as you can handle drinking from that fire hose. In the existing Dev P2P network, you're limited to how fast a single full node can throw data at you and how many of them you can get to throw data at you. You have a much larger peer set that's able to, in theory, throw this stuff at you concurrently So I think just as one specific example, state sync is something that we might be able to do faster.
So maybe yes, going a bit beyond the Portal network for a bit, right? Like a lot of these things touch on like greater themes of the Ethereum peer-to-peer network and the stability of the protocol in general. So what do you see as being the greatest challenge in making sure that those parts of the Ethereum infrastructure will be able to withstand the pressure that will inevitably put on them over the next 10 or 20 years?
So my hope is that there's a really nice synergy between the existing dev P2P ETH protocol that execution clients use today and the Portal protocols that we're building. There are things that dev P2P ETH does incredibly well, and I don't want to get rid of those. I just want there to be some other options. And dev P2P ETH has been battle tested for many years and has those many years of battle testing kind of security confidence under its belt. It'll be a long time before the Portal protocols even get to come close to that. And they are known, DHTs themselves are known to be attackable in certain ways that are more difficult to attack dev P2P ETH. So in terms of like the most critical core infrastructure, I think dev P2P still has a large role to play. I think Portal can augment that in some significant ways to improve things like sync times and general client UX, while execution clients can still hold that high degree of security and confidence of the dev P2P ETH network.
No, that makes sense. So you mentioned attacks. Are you worried at all about attacks on Portal?
No, but I'm kind of excited about them.
Okay.
Because it means that we're doing something that's worth attacking, and that's great.
Who here has built something worth attacking?
I mean, like,
it's fun, right? Who here has built something that's been attacked? Who here had fun defending against the attack?
Yeah, we could be in the R&D. I've thought about this a lot, and I answer this question pretty similarly every time, but I struggled with these questions about security and possible attacks and things, and for a while I kind of tried to, we'll deal with it this way. Ultimately, the answer is, it's okay if what we're building gets attacked. We are not currently mission-critical infrastructure, and it getting attacked will be a really nice demonstration of which areas we need to look at and fix and address.
I guess people can connect to both Portal and Infura for a while, right? That makes sense. So, what's the what's the future for you guys? Like, what's the team currently focusing on, and what are the things that are preoccupying developers' minds right now, and what are things to look further into the future?
I think I tell them every week to do it worse and do it faster, because I believe that that's the fastest route or the best route to us building the thing that needs to get built. We turned a corner in the last 3 months. There had been a lot of kind of building software into the void without knowing if it was working or doing what it was supposed to be doing, and things like that. And then in the last 3 months or so, we turned a corner from, I think it's working, I think it's doing what it's supposed to do. We've built a lot of monitoring and infrastructure and kind of this other stuff to be able to look into it and see what's going on. And that closed the development loop cycle and made things start going a lot faster, hence the delivery of history network functionality. And I am really excited to have all of the, this is a project that I kind of came into it with this, like, I've looked at this, I've learned about it, I've studied it, and I think I have a solution, and it's big, and I wrote it all down, and look, it's really big, I'm sorry. And then I had to help get all of these new developers up to speed on all of that past work and past knowledge. That's what last year was. And what I'm really excited about is having a group of peers now that I can work with on this stuff that understand it at a lower, deeper level, and who are kind of there with me working on these problems. I think that's the thing I'm most excited about.
No, that's amazing. Thank you so much, Piper.
Welcome. Thanks, Vitalik.